construction workers are unskilled. And for many, construction work is the entry point to the labor market. The industry faces a number of challenges, including a high level of health problems and accidents. Construction is indeed one of the most hazardous sectors in the world of work. In addition, it includes a high level of informalization of employment, enterprises, and the organization of the construction process. This has negative impacts, as we know, on social protection and workers' rights. So the construction industry stands out as a sector in critical need of better alignment with the principles of what we in the ILO call decent work. We know that approximately 1 in 6 fatal accidents reported globally take place in the construction sector. That is 60,000 fatal accidents per year. Yet these accidents and health problems can be prevented. Governments, employers, and workers have a common interest in promoting occupational safety and health in the sector. Turning to Pakistan, occupational safety and health is an area of systemic decent work deficit in Pakistan. While the incidence of occupational accidents decreased from 4.3% per year to 2.7% in 2021, on average, every 37th worker in Pakistan experiences a serious occupational accident or injury every year. And this is why occupational safety and health was included as a priority when the government of Pakistan, employers and workers signed a decent work country program earlier this year, the 4th decent work country program signed by Pakistan since 2006. We find it very encouraging to note that the government of Pakistan is preparing to ratify 2 ILO conventions concerning occupational safety and health, numbers 155 and 187 for those interested in the details. So against this backdrop, how can we build on recent initiatives taken by the government, employers and workers to promote even more compliant and decent working conditions in the construction industry in Pakistan? So to debate this issue, I'm joined by an esteemed panel, and the moderator has already introduced the members. I will first hand the floor to Dr. Saifullah Chaudhry for a keynote introduction to set the scene to the discussion. I will then ask Mr. Khalid Mahmood to follow up with an intervention. Mr. Malik Najaf Khan will then take the floor and will close the panel with Mr. Mehar Abdul Haq from the Brick Kiln Owners Association. We will then open the floor for interaction and close with a round of responses and reactions from the panel. On that note, I will turn to Dr. Chaudhry, who I must also say is a former ILO colleague, so it gives me extra pleasure to give him the floor to set the stage for our discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Chair, thank you so very much, Khalid Saab, and other panelist members. So this, if you can load the presentation, please. So I'll basically, what I'm trying to do here is, as Gail also mentioned, so we'll talk about Pakistan's bricking industry in a South Asian context. And within that, I'll try to sort of highlight by the end of the presentation, the 3 fault zone, which needs a bit of attention. That's where I'll sort of conclude. In this presentation, next slide, please. The areas that I'll talk about is the bricking industry in South Asia, the environmental effect or the cost, Pakistan's bricking industries, sort of a shape and size, the 3 fault zone, which I feel are the fault zones that need to be looked at, and then a strategic approach and thinking ahead. Moving on, in South Asia, this is the ILO study in 2017, which they did jointly with the Brook Institute and the Donkey Sanctuary. So as part of that study, what they mapped it, that in South Asia in particular, the whole urban industry or the urban development is driven by this brick kiln industry across different countries in Asia. And South Asia produces, as per their estimates, 268 billion bricks per annum, which is about 17% of Asia's brick production. And they estimated 4.4 to 5.2 million workers engaged in hazardous condition, men, women, and children. And 68% of workers, the study estimated, are in bonded or forced labor. By the way, 19% are under the 18 years of age. Most brick productions is done in South Asia between November and June due to the monsoon. And Pakistan, by the way, has two seasons. In February and March, there's again rains, so they break in that period. In terms of the brick kiln operations, about 150,000 brick kiln operates in South Asia, and only 640 are mechanized or semi-mechanized. Now, the estimates about Pakistan's brick kiln industry, the number, these are sort of varied number. This study found out about 11,500 brick kilns, and they are primarily movable or fixed chimney Bull's Trench kiln. Most brick production, as I mentioned earlier, is during November and June period because of the monsoon effect. Next, please. No, previous slide. I think the Pakistan, yes, thank you. So in Pakistan's brick industry, another study done by International Center for Integrated Mountain Development and Ministry of Climate Change coming to Pakistan in 2019. And they estimated brick kilns in Pakistan between 18,000 to 20,000. And again, out of these 18,000 or 20,000, 15,000 were the fixed chimney Bull's Trench kilns, and only 150 were zigzag, which uses zigzag technology, which has an effect, and will come to it, a positive effect on the environment. Again, they estimate that production of brick kiln in Pakistan is 82.5 billion bricks per year against the demand of 112 billion bricks. So there is a gap in production and the demand. Estimated workforce, they estimated 1.3 million workers, including 23% women. And out of these 1.3 million workers, 69%, almost 70%, about 900,000, they estimated were the molders. So molder is an important role to play, and in the next few slides, I'll talk about that. Brick sale revenue, their estimates like annual sale revenue is 676 billion rupees, which is US dollar 5.64 billion. Average annual coal consumption, 13 million tons, and annual coal expense is about 179 billion, which is US dollar 1.49 billion. Next. इससे पीछे वाला जी. एक और पीछे करेंगे slide? Yeah. So this is on the environment, the brick kilns environment effect. The two environmental effects which have been identified by the earlier ILO Brook study, which talks about one is the nature of smoke emission, and second is the high usage of fertile topsoil for the brick making. For the smoke, they talked about a brick firing process and structural design lacks ventilation. What it causes is it produces black contaminated smoke containing CO2 and CO, and also short-lived climate pollutants. The other point which they highlight is the burning of coal in the brick industry produces roughly 1/3. This is like they're talking about South Asia. So the burning of coal in brick industry produces roughly 1/3 of the total carbon dioxide emission of the global airline industry. So it's a huge impact overall the environment. For clay, they mention that brick making clay is obtained from excavating fertile alluvial soil from riverbeds, ponds, and agricultural land. One estimate is 100,000 brick kilns may use up to 400 million tons of good quality topsoil each year. Again, it's an estimated by the study. So non-renewable source is becoming exhausted, and problems such as soil erosion, depletion of soil quality, and flooding are increasingly emerging. Move on. Next, please. Next, please. Thank you. So looking at this sort of a South Asian and Pakistani context and the sort of a role of the brick kiln industry, what I sort of propose that there are these three fault zones within the brick kiln industry in Pakistan or even beyond as well, but particularly from the Pakistani context. Zone 1 I talk about is basically workers' right violation. Zone 2, or the fault line of Zone 2, is the environmental degradation effect, and Zone 3 is low molders productivity. And this low molders productivity will become a little bit more point as we talk about the way the molders are doing their job. Next, please. So workers' right, brick kilns, management structure is good to sort of understand. Many of us around the table would know how brick kiln HR work, but for those, just to remind us, and for those of us who doesn't know, typically brick kiln owner does not sort of operate at the brick kiln. There is a munshi or a manager who runs a brick kiln. Under him, it's always a man. There are four important sort of player, Bharai Wala and Jalai Wala and transporter, but Jamadar is the one who manages the pather. Pathers are those who mold brick. Raw matti ka jo aata sa ban jata hai, usse wo ईंट जो बनाते हैं, the mold. So that is where the families come in, women come in, or even the children come in. So this is an important to know a point that where this whole supply and demand gets into a problematic area. Moving on. So in this fault zone 1, workers' right violation, there's so many issues which we know exist in the brick industry, whether it's an issue of written contract or the lack of written contracts, or non-regulated advances, or peshki system, or the piece rate workers, wo jo molders hain, wo jo kaam karte hain, wo mahine ki tankha nahi hoti, so they like 1,000 brick ke pe kitna paisa milta hai. Lack of availability of social protection, the working conditions, forced labor issues, and child labor issues, freedom of association and collective bargaining, the absence of that, wash services at brick kiln has a challenge, and then occupational safety and health issues, and lack of regular labor inspections. So this is the second sort of area of the first area of the fault zone. Second zone is the environmental degradation. So type of fuel usage, as we know, it's not only coal, also plastic and tires and other materials are also used, which also cause to sort of environmental pollution. There is some good example happening in Punjab in particular, and KP, I suppose, where they have a zigzag technology, which reduces the emission of CO and CO2 and SLCPs. And I understand my colleague Benjamin told me from the ILO that it reduces like 87% of the emission, who was running this amazing project for the ILO. And long-term vision, well, there's an opportunity also. The government of Pakistan, as part of a long-term vision of the government of Pakistan, is sort of trying to move away from high emission technology to low emission technology, and their focus is on just transition, giving a priority to those areas where the vulnerable labor, vulnerable workers are there, to retool the industry or reskill the workforce. So there's sort of an opportunity that if industry moves from regular conventional brick kilns to zigzag technology, there are options. So fault zone 3, which is low molder productivity. So this is an area, and I'll draw your attention to the screens. In my recent work, we found out in Sindh, for example, from workers themselves, men and women workers, and they estimated that each woman molds about 600 bricks, and some say less than that a day, and a man can mold about 800 bricks a day. So the problem is, if you look at the second column picture, it's a clay making. So these women, majority of them, we did a focus group discussion, and they were Hindu minority. So they identified that major issue is cleaning the soil and mixing the soil, because that takes a lot of time. These people get up early in the morning, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and then start their work and finish like a noon or sometime in the afternoon. So that particular process takes a lot of time. Second is the manual nature of molding the brick. As many of us have seen, and if you have visited the bricks, the second line of the picture you see in this particular, this is like in Larkana, where what they were doing, they have a sancha or a die, which can make 4 bricks. So they have to fill this fill this sancha or the die and do a compaction and turn it around. So it's a manual job to make this 4 brick. It takes a little time, of course. And then, it has an effect on your body and the shoulder, because you have to do it repeatedly. So men are doing it, women are doing it, children don't do it because, it's heavy to lift, but they do other sort of task around it. So both these tasks are manually done, which means that creates a bit of a challenge in terms of how to handle it. If we are going to produce, if Pakistan is producing, let's say 100 billion bricks, all or majority, 95, 97% of these bricks are produced manually by hands, by these people. And that creates a challenge in terms of how could these two elements, for example, could be semi-mechanized, both the clay making and also the brick molding. Moving on. This is like a strategic, as Munir already talked about that, strategic approach and thinking ahead. Slow one by one. Thank you. Can you take other bullets back, if possible? So first, of course, thanks to Solidarity Center, Ahmad is sitting here. In 2015, as their sort of push and initiative, we developed a decent work bricking framework, and development impact solution was part of that sort of initiative, and I participated in or led that process. And I'm really glad that we moved on to the next level with STPI. In 2023, we have come up with socially and environmentally compliant decent work bricklings framework in 2023, which is good. However, what I feel is that the first one, which we developed in 2015, only addressed one of the fault zone, which means that decent work deficits or the workers issue. And in 2023, this one, which STPI has taken a lead, is addressing 2 of the fault zones, which is like a decent work deficit and also environment issues. They are also taking care of that way. However, my suggestion or recommendation is that we need to also look at the productivity element that way. How to increase the productivity of the molders so that these women and men, and by the way, in Sindh, the brick workers, as the Labor Department Sindh shared with me, 60% are from Hindu minority regions. So if we can increase their productivity, because they are paid by piece rate, 1000 brick बनाएंगे तो 800-600 रुपए ऐसा कुछ पैसे मिलते हैं. So if they can produce more brick with some semi-mechanized, I'm not saying like bring the whole technology in it and move them away because they will become unemployed, but some tool which is semi-mechanized, and that woman who is making 4 bricks, if she can make with that semi-mechanized, less human force and more easily, maybe 8 bricks, I don't know. I'm not an expert on technology innovation, but people can guide us on that from engineers. So that productivity increases and her income would also increases. So my suggestion is that the strategic framework to Solidarity Center, to ILO, to consider that we look at this 3rd fault zone as well to increase the productivity at the same time. And the last point, I'm so happy we have SPHF's presence here. The strategic, what I'm saying is the SPHF and the World Bank introduced this 2.1 million home reconstruction, which is so amazing job, which is, I guess, is never done in Pakistan before, a trailblazing in many ways. That would require, as per our estimates, about 23 to 31 billion bricks. Yeah, 21 to 31 billion bricks to in a very short duration. They have the investment of $0.5 million US, or which can go up to 1.7 billion probably. that will come in. So the government or SPHF is providing the resources. So if I am a flood effective, I get that money, which means that I now need to buy the bricks. So if there are more people buying the bricks, but the production capacity is limited, which means there's a lag time. Lag time in supply of brick, which means that if the SPHF has to give me the money, they will give it installment. I go to plant level, I get first whatever the installment. I go to higher level, I get the second installment. Go to higher level, I need more bricks, but brick kiln may not produce brick within given time frame. So there is a bit of a calculation. Other is the price, typically demand and supply. There are more people needing bricks, and the number of price would go up. What I heard from SHP, I'm sorry, my apologies, I don't pronounce the name right, that framework which is helping bringing NGOs together to support SPHF work, they informed us that price of the lag time has increased few weeks, and the price of brick from 2022 to 2023 has also increased from ₹5 to ₹11 and 12. So clearly there is an impact which needs to be looked at. So strategic approach and thinking ahead, if we want to sort of look at, it's a good time STPI can take a leadership in that and ensure that if the 3 fault zones are covered, and we also include somehow the productivity element, ILO is here, and they can take the leadership, for example, in ensuring that decent work deficit doesn't happen in that area, and environmental issues are there, and I'm sure other UN agencies could also come in. With that, I think that was my last slide. I'll conclude with my session. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for sticking to the time. That was much appreciated. Thank you for setting the stage for us. Thank you for outlining the challenges that exist in this sector. The 3 fault zones, clearly we identify with those workers' rights, environmental footprint, and how it links to productivity. It's all part of decent work, really. Thank you also for not only setting out the challenges, but also making us think forward and looking at some of the possible solutions. I'm going to hand over to Mr. Khalid Mahmoud, Director at the Labour Education Foundation, a foundation that shares the ambitions of the ILO in terms of capacitating and advocating for workers' rights. So I'm very excited to hear your intervention. Mr. Mahmoud, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, STPI and Solidarity Center and all the other organizers of this important event. The last presentation really informed us that how important and how big is this industry in Pakistan. I can only add to that one figure that 1.3 million workers, or more than 1.3 million workers, are associated with this industry. Bricklaying industry in Pakistan is one of the largest in the world. So when we talk about the social compliance, I think we need to be very clear for whom social compliance. Social compliance for the employers, social compliance for the government, or social compliance for the workers. When we talk about social compliance, there are few fundamental things which, from the labor rights perspective, we must understand. Freedom of association and collective bargaining, social protection, living wages, safe working conditions. Now, if we look at our constitution and the labor laws and the ILO conventions that we have ratified, we proudly say that our constitution provides fundamental rights to the workers. We have signed ILO conventions which are there for protecting the fundamental rights of the workers. And we have labor laws which, in comparison to a lot of other countries, are good labor laws. So why our bricklayer industry is infamous for bonded labor? Why whenever there is a discussion on the bonded labor, we hear about the bricklayer industry? Why we are not able to implement the labor laws in this industry to make it socially compliant? Our distinguished guests from the Bricklayer Employers Association can talk more from their perspective, but I think from the labor perspective, the bricklayer industry, we cannot look at the bricklayer industry in isolation of all the other industries. Where is the compliance in other industries as well? But in the bricklayer industry, because it lacks modernization as well, it is still considered to be that industry which is running on very old methods. While we see around the world, we see in Nepal and our neighboring countries, the bricklayer industry is changing, the technology is changing. There is lack of political will in the government to implement its own labor laws. Our governments, any government, really did not want to implement the labor laws in any industry, and the bricklayer industry workers, majority of the workers are still in bonded labor. When we say bonded labor, it's not that they are chained. They are working in such conditions where they are forced to take the wages as agreed by the employer because they are under the burden of peshki or advances. Why they are under the burden of peshki? Because they are not being paid the minimum wage. This year, the minimum wage in Punjab for 1,000 brick is 2,368 rupees. If a worker makes 1,000 bricks, he should get this, he or she should get this amount. And workers are able to make 1,000 bricks per day easily. So I think we have to be very clear when we talk about the social compliance that it's all about the labor rights in the industry, and we lack implementation of labor laws in this industry. The government is one of the biggest buyers of the bricks as well, as far as I know. And the government is buying bricks from that industry which is lacking in compliance, towards the compliance of some of the fundamental labor rights. So this is another angle to look at the practices and the policies of the government and other buyers as well. Individual buyers, of course, do not know about these things, but the government has its rules, and the government also has its responsibility towards the labor rights protection. So they are one of the biggest buyers, and I hope in future they will be able to see if they are buying from those industries which are socially compliant. Now there are few terms being used in the labor when we talk about the labor rights: socially compliant, social dialogue. I think we have to be very clear in these terms as well. Socially compliant means very clearly implementation of labor laws, protection of labor rights. When we talk about social dialogue, it's collective bargaining. If there is no collective bargaining happening, then there is no social dialogue. If we want to include other stakeholders in the social dialogue, then first the collective bargaining in the industry where workers have freedom to organize and be able to bargain collectively is happening, then only the social dialogue can happen beyond that framework. So how we are allowing our workers to organize and be able to participate in the collective bargaining, it's unfortunately it's not happening in Pakistan, not only in the bricklayer industry, but all other industries, private industries especially. Now coming to my last point, when we talk about the environmentally compliant industry, of course, there is a concept of just transition. When we talk about the reduction in the carbon emission and we talk about the changes in the industry, we think that with these measures, the environment can become better, and we can proudly say that we are compliant with the environmental standards. But I think talking about, there is one famous quote from a trade unionist of Latin America that ecology without class struggle is just gardening, and just transition without protection of basic labor rights is nothing but a fraud. We have to be very clear that when we talk about just transition, when we are trying to improve the environment, then the workers who will lose their jobs or who will have to move towards new sectors or who will have to learn new skills in the same industry, they are the most important stakeholder in just transition. There are concepts of universal basic services and universal basic wages being discussed in the world. I think when here it's important, especially for this industry, if we want to move towards just transition, if we want to work on the just transition, the main stakeholder should be workers, and we have to protect workers' rights in this industry and all other industries as well, if we really want to make our climate better. Thank you very much. I'll stop it.
Thank you, Mr. Mahmood. Thank you for drawing our attention to a number of the challenges that indeed are faced by workers in the sector. I think compliance is it's becoming such an important issue. We saw only yesterday, I believe, the EU launched their report on Pakistan's compliance with the conditionalities under the GSP Plus facility, which Pakistan benefits from. And of course, we see when it becomes a conditionality, then compliance is much easier to argue for. So I think you're quite right when you say if the government sources the bricks from the kilns, why not make it a compliance issue in that sense? I think there's also a question to be raised around the capacity of the Labour Inspectorate to carry out those inspections that are required in order to uphold compliance. And I think there we have another area where additional capacity is probably needed. And lastly, I think we do see in this particular sector the challenges of workers when it comes to organization and when it comes to giving them a voice to carry out a social dialogue. I think there are very few trade unions in the brick kiln sector. So from that, I'd like to move on to Mr. Malik Najaf Khan, Chief Operating Officer of the Sindh People's Housing for Flood Affectees. We've already heard a little bit about the fantastic work you're doing, so I'll give you the floor to build on that narrative, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much. A very good evening. I think Dr. Saifullah have covered a lot of aspects when it comes to issues related to brick production, not just the environment, but also the social aspects of that. Khalid Saab also gave a perspective in which, of course, me being part of a government was involved also in terms of how to actually steer the whole process. And then I'll give you the perspective in terms of the general development is something else, but when it comes to reconstruction and rehabilitation, the perspective might change. So I'll just give you a glimpse of what the project is, what kind of people we are working is, what kind of social and environmental aspects that the project is currently covering. In addition to what we were talking about, just transition or in terms of introduction of technologies, So we'll go through it and then we'll open the forum for discussion. Can you run the presentation, please, Ji? Ji. Next, please, Ji. Presentation might seem a bit longer, but I'll try to cover it in 12 to 15 minutes, the time that is allocated for the session. Just to give you the background, in 2022 floods, 24 out of 30 districts of Sindh were severely affected. 70% of the Sindh was submerged. Around 12.36 million people were affected, and the total damage and losses in the housing sector was 2.1 million. And 83% of total housing was either kacha or touch house, which was not brick-based, not on the standards of structural parameters. And this was the total caseload that the government of Sindh actually took for the way forward, with a commitment to get them reconstructed in the shortest possible time frame. The time frame that is given to SPHF is around 5 years, but we are looking forward to close the project within the next 2.5 years. Next, please. So from day one, it was decided that it is not going to be carried out as a usual work thing. So a specialized Section 42 public sector company was established with a mix of government, public sector, and the market-based specialists. And currently, we are a very lean organization working with around 17 professionals. These are technical experts. And the current portfolio, as mentioned earlier by Dr. Saifullah, we are currently standing at $1 billion confirmed commitment, and around $800 million is going to be confirmed by June. So negotiations are ongoing. Next, please. 4 pillars on which the whole process or the project works in. Number 1 is transparency. Next, please, sir. From day one, we initiated the project on a very robust mechanisms. We have got the whole system is run on a management information system, which is a live system going on. The data is synchronized from the field and transferred to SPHF on a daily basis, on regular basis. It's an Android-based application, which is actually linked with the management information system, and that is linked with SAP, which is linked with the banking system. There is no financial intermediary, no broker, no contractor, no nothing which actually can manipulate, add, subtract the whole process. And we actually have all the social, environmental compliances and safeguard processes that overlook the whole process, along with various checks and balances in which the amount is transferred directly into the account of beneficiary. And post-withdrawal, they start the reconstruction in 4 stages, and the money is given in 4 stages for reconstruction of the house. It is to be noted that this is not the cost of reconstruction. This is support to reconstruction, and current cover area of the core unit we are talking about is around 240 square feet. Next, please. Rehabilitation strategy, when we talk about new resilient housing, basic principles are it is going to be a beneficiary driven. There is no contractor involved in point number 1. Continuous technical assistance and hand-holding to the beneficiaries through STAT socio-technical assistance team is being provided. Currently, we are working with more than 800 STAT teams comprising of 3 members in each team, 1 engineer and 2 social mobilizers. It's a housing cash grant-based mechanism directly into the accounts of the beneficiary. There is no policy basically for land acquisition, neither to displacing the people from which they were living in at the time of 2022 floods. However, the areas which are of extreme exposure to the hazards, they are being currently looked into. I will discuss those matters later on, Chi. And of course, you know, one of the aspects that is directly related to this session is rebuild with readily available material. And the current materials that are readily available in Sindh for housing reconstruction is, of course, burnt brick and block manufacturing. Next, please. We started the project as a housing project, but the way within 7 months down the line, or within 6, maybe we are hardly 10 months old. 6 months down the line, we started realizing that houses standalone would not suffice. The housing reconstruction should be on resilience standard. That was the basic principles from day one. The basic wash facilities, depending upon the locality and the location and the need of people, needs to be looked into. There needs to be what the discussion is going on in terms of transition and innovative technology. We have already moved forward. I'll discuss on that in the next slides. Universal accessibility is one of the main aspects of the project, along with clean energy and digitization of residential land revenue records. Now, these in bullet points seems to be very small things, but when I'll give you the brief of that, you can imagine, you will look that what kind of a mass scale project it is. Next, please, Chief. So starting from, moving from the orthodox method, currently we have carried out, using the drone technology, we have covered 2 days, and now we are covering 300 more days in next 2 months. So all the settlement improvement, settlement planning, housing reconstruction is based upon technological aspects, in which the covered, non-covered area is being determined. We go for area measurement, height of the houses. We have got settlement topography, settlement height analysis, slope analysis. Along with that, we are working on floodwater modeling also. So wherever the elements of settlements are to be incorporated in terms of getting the area out of inundation at the earliest, we are looking at all those parameters. And when it comes to settlement improvement, this is not just the gully nully orthodox method that normally has been done in the villages. It is going to be purely based upon technological aspects in terms of making it less exposed to future precipitation and floods. Next, please. Land rights, of course, a lot of people have been talking about land rights, and since current portfolio of the land rights where we are actually facing problem is around 358,000 people who are living on the landlord's land, as discussed in a lighter tone earlier today. So we are talking about land rights, we are talking about empowering the factories, we are talking about preference for the women and vulnerable household, preference to them, and of course, extensive support for land eligibility and documentation. Now, this, go back please. Now, normally this process has been carried out in a very orthodox way by the revenue department, patwar, patta, stuff like that. So we have taken that all out from that revenue department, and a specialized unit has been established within SPHF, in which actually we are looking at digitalizing the land record on a blockchain basis. Next, please. So coming to the elements that we look into while carrying out the reconstruction, it is the hazardous maps, vulnerability maps, risk maps, past hazard. All my 2.1 million beneficiary has been plotted in these maps. These yellow dots and the red dots are 2.1 million beneficiaries of SPHF. The red dots you can see are the people who are living in the first line of defense. That is the embankments. Next, please. These are our partners out of all big 4, Ernst & Young, KPMG, and PwC. These are our statutory auditors, internal auditors, and this is where the transparency comes in along with EY. Next, please. Now these are just the figures. I'm not going to go into details. At this point in time, we are standing at initial grant transfer to a bank of account open of 375,000 beneficiaries, to which 268,000 beneficiaries have been dispersed the amount, out of which 125,000 have already started the reconstruction. Next, please. Just move on, G, from the slides. This is basically the kind of data we have to link it with various projects. I just want to focus on income. Go to the income slide, G. Demographics, please. Demographics, please move forward, G. Move forward from occupation, please, G. G, income brackets, G. Now, this is where, the discussion actually chips in terms of, the income levels for the people which we are working with. Currently, we are talking about employment income of the wages which are working in the clean industry. But the beneficiaries that we are working in, 94% are earning less than $70 a month, G. And 31% of my population is basically earning less than $30. So you can look at the capacity in terms of, even the government strives to move towards innovative technologies, and there is a cost affiliated with that. The capacity of the beneficiaries actually to get the product for reconstruction of the house is beyond the size of their pockets. Next, please. Disability, I'm not going to please move forward. G. Next on, G. Next on, G. This is also vulnerability aspects. No need. Land and occupancy, please move forward with that, G. Move forward, G, please. Move forward, G. So, in terms of the mechanisms that we have defined, it's a 6-stage process for disbursements, which actually goes through various procedures in MIS, in which artificial based intelligence is also being used for confirmation and deviations that are actually processed for transparency purposes. Next, please, G. So out of the current caseload of 1.8 million that we have processed, the only clean caseload that came out is around 1 million. The rest is under the grievance redressal mechanism that will be accounted in phase 2. Next, please. These are the systems that we are running, which actually, this is all automated. There is no paperwork in the organization at this point in time. All the deviations and all the systems are run based upon intelligence-based systems, and the deviations and variations are accounted for by the system. Next, please. It's a real-time process. What we are standing, what the figures that I am giving you right now, kindly next please. So it's a 4-stage process. So every stage process. So anytime our STAT team actually assesses against parameters, this is the first assessment that is being carried out. Next please. So it's a real-time information that that is synchronized to the management information system of SPHF at the real-time basis. This is the plinth certification on which we provide the second installment. Next please. This is the lintel certification against certain parameters of resilient reconstruction on which we provide the third installment, and this is the roof compression or final disbursement. Next, please. Now, ENS documentation and environmental social guard, not just related to the industry, but also related to the project also. So the framework, the labor management, the stakeholder engagement, gender and C action plans, grievance redressal mechanism, environmental and social commitment plans, environmental social screening checklist, negative and positive lists, all these things have been accounted for in the project G. And not just for the project beneficiaries, not just the project staff, but also the industry that the project is working in. Currently, we have carried out discussion with more than 150,000 brick kiln owners in Sindh in terms of their production capacity, time of environment, the fuel they are using, and how to actually change the whole system. And we are moving forward. Next, please. We understand. Next, please. We understand that the complete 2.1 million. Currently, the figures were being pointed out that there is a requirement of 2.1 to 3 billion bricks. Of course, the industry have got a very stronger load in terms of giving the raw material for the same, but the product for the same. But we have to move forward, not just from the brick lanes to other innovative technologies. Next, please. Leave the GRM, sir. Next, please. So this is where I'll be focusing on, basically from the brick to the good brick system. Next, can you move forward, G? This is just go back, please, just one slide. G. So currently we are working with Junido. Go back, G. We are currently working with Junido in terms of the good brick systems. Our target is to get at least 0.4 to 0.5 million houses constructed on good brick. The technology is new to Pakistan. It's a Korean technology. The innovation stands actually accounted for. The contract stand signs. We will be started producing the good brick in Sindh from next month, and the first 10 houses will be built by January. And based upon the pilot, we're going to expand it, and we're going to have discussions with the leads of the industry actually to shift their technology from whatever in gradual manner, and wherever government of Sindh and the donors can subsidize all this, we will support that subsidization. G. The current cost of brick in Sindh is around 10 to 11 rupees, but the good brick costs around 13 rupees. G. So we are subsidizing at this point in time around 2 rupees by the government, basically just to support environment and social friendly aspects to that. So I'm not going to go into the details of the social and other aspects because that have already been covered by my former colleague. G. Next, please. G. So just press the enter. G. This is the universal accessibility. So this is not just the bricks. Enter kar dijiyega ji. And the story moves on and moves on where they were and where they are from. And these are just the examples of few of them. And now at this point in time, there are thousands of them. Thank you very much, Posh.
Very, very impressive and a mammoth task, and appreciate my apologies for rushing you, but appreciate Listen, just to have time for discussion, I will quickly hand over to the next and final speaker, which is Mr. Meher Abdul Haq, Vice Chairperson of the Brick Kilns Owners Association. You have the floor.
تھینک یو ویری مچ سر. میرے لیے یہ زیادہ آسان ہے کہ میں اردو میں بات کر لوں. مجھے اجازت ہے. بہت شکریہ. میں چیئر کا بھی شکر گزار ہوں اور خاص طور پہ آرگنائزر کا کہ ہمیں بھی آپ نے انوائٹ کیا. میں دوبارہ شکریہ ادا کرتا ہوں. ہماری جو انڈسٹری ہے اس پہ جو جتنی باتیں ہوئی ہیں، پہلے میں یہ چاہتا تھا کہ میں اپنی انڈسٹری کا اپنا تعارف کروا دوں، لیکن مجھے یہاں آ کے لگا کہ ہماری انڈسٹری کے حوالے سے سارے لوگ بہت اچھی طرح جانتے ہیں ہمارے اندر کیا کیا خامیاں ہیں، ان کی نشاندہی پہلے ہی کر دی گئی ہے. میں یہ چاہتا تھا کہ اپنی جو خامیاں ہیں ہم ان کا سلوشن دیں گے کہ آپ سے ہم کس طرح مدد لے کے ان خامیوں کو دور کر سکتے ہیں. تو میں بہت شکر گزار ہوں ڈاکٹر سیف اللہ صاحب کا اور خالد صاحب کا خاص طور پہ کہ جس طرح انہوں نے ہمارے سیکٹر کے حوالے سے معلومات آپ تک شیئر کی ہیں. میرا کافی کام آسان کر دیا ہے. برک کلن انڈسٹری پاکستان ایک، جیسا کہ ساتھیوں نے بتایا، ایک بڑا نمبر ہے ریجن میں، اور ہم روایتی طریقے سے کام کرتے آ رہے ہیں، اس میں کوئی شک نہیں ہے، لیکن ہم نے وقت کے ساتھ ساتھ اپنے آپ کو بدلنے کی کوشش بھی کی ہے. ریسنٹلی پچھلے سالوں میں 2017 میں منسٹری آف کلائمیٹ چینج نے ہماری ایک میٹنگ اسی موڈ کے ساتھ لاہور میں کروائی تھی سر. وہاں پر ہم نے اپنے آپ کو ایکو فرینڈلی کرنے کے لیے، ان کی ٹیکنالوجی کو سمجھنے کے لیے اپنی مدد آپ کے تحت ہم نیپال گئے اور وہاں سے ہم نے یہ زگ زیگ ٹیکنالوجی کو پاکستان میں لا کے خود سے وداؤٹ اینی کائنڈ آف سپورٹ بائی دا گورنمنٹ اور اینی ادر سیکٹر ہم نے اپنے پیسوں سے اس کو یہاں پہ رائج کیا. تو اس کو یہاں پہ ریپلیکیٹ کیا اور اس کے لیے ہم شکر گزار ہیں. دوبارہ میں یہاں کہنا چاہوں گا کہ ہم یہ بات لے کے ILO کے پاس چلے گئے کہ آپ ہماری مدد کریں کہ یہ جو انوائرمنٹ فرینڈلی ٹیکنالوجی ہے اس میں آکوپیشنل سیفٹی اینڈ ہیلتھ کا سیکٹر بھی اس میں ہے، تو آپ اس میں ہماری مدد کریں کہ ہم لوگوں تک یہ اس ٹیکنالوجی کو لے جائیں. تو اس وقت انگریڈ نے، جو ان کی ڈائریکٹر تھی کنٹری، انہوں نے ہمیں ہیلپ کیا اور ہمارے ساتھ انہوں نے ایک سسٹم بنایا. ہم نے تھرو پاکستان، کوئٹہ، پشاور اور پاکستان کے بہت سارے شہروں میں جا کے ILO کے ساتھ لوگوں کو سینسٹائز کیا، اویئرنیس دی اور لوگوں کو زگ زیگ ٹیکنالوجی کے حوالے سے ٹریننگ دی کہ زگ زیگ ٹیکنالوجی اصل میں ہے کیا اور کیسے آپ کو اور آپ کے ورکر کے لیے بہتر ہے. تو میں یہ آپ کو بتا دوں کہ زگ زیگ ٹیکنالوجی پہ جانے کی وجہ سے پاکستان میں، اگر ہم آلریڈی پاکستان میں نیئر اباؤٹ 20,000 برکس کلن ہیں تقریباً آل اوور پاکستان، تو ہمارا یہ خیال ہے کہ اس میں ہم تقریباً 1.5 لاکھ ٹن 20,000 کرتے ہیں کوئلہ. آپ نے بتایا جی کتنا کوئلہ آپ نے بتایا تھا، میں فگر اچھا 30% ہم سیو کر جاتے ہیں. فار ایگزامپل اگر ہم 1.5 کروڑ ٹن کوئلہ پاکستان میں ہماری انڈسٹری پہلے یوز کر رہی تھی، تو زگ زیگ پہ جانے سے جو 1.5 کروڑ ٹن سالانہ کوئلہ استعمال کرتے تھے، اگر ہم اس پہ چلے جائیں تو ہم 50 لاکھ ٹن کوئلہ سالانہ بچا سکتے ہیں زگ زیگ پہ جانے. اس کے کیا امپیکٹ آئیں گے وہ آپ سمجھ لیں کہ اس کے کتنے پاکستان میں انرجی سیونگ کے حوالے سے اور اس کی جو برننگ سے جو انوائرمنٹ جتنا آلودہ ہوگا ہم اس سے بچ جائیں گے. ایک بات اور، زگ زیگ پہ جانے سے ہم نے 80 to 85% جو ویزیبل پولوشن تھی وہ بالکل الحمدللہ وہ ختم ہو گئی ہے. اگر آپ نے زگ زیگ بٹوں کو وزٹ کیا ہو تو پہلے جو بٹیں جہاں پہ اسکرین میں چلی تھی وہ چمنی، وہ بلیک سموک دے رہا اور بڑا خطرناک دعا کاربن فضا میں جا رہی ہے. تو اب وہ جب زگ زیگ بھٹا چل رہا ہوتا ہے تو ایسے جیسے ایک وہ کروز اور اسٹیمر چل رہا ہوتا ہے برائلر، وہ وائٹ سا سموک اس میں ایک لہر آتی، تو اب وہ ویزیبل پولوشن ختم ہو گئی ہے. یہ ہماری انڈسٹری میں یہ ہماری چینج ہے. لیکن وہاں پر جو رہنے والے ہمارے ورکر ہیں ان کی زندگی پہ بھی اس کا صحت مند اثر ہوا ہے، کیونکہ جب وہ کاربن ہماری جو ورکرز ہوتے ہیں وہ ظاہر بھٹوں پہ ہی رہتے ہیں، ان کی ساتھ ہی ہاؤسنگ کالونیاں ہوتی ہیں. تو خالد صاحب میں آپ کے علم میں لانا چاہتا ہوں، میں نے بھی ہمارے جو نیبرنگ کنٹری ہیں ان کو وزٹ کیا، نیپال کو، انڈیا کو، ویتنام کو اور بھی ملکوں کو. یقین مانیے کہ ہم پھر بھی کچھ लोगों से काफी बेहतर खड़े हैं। वहां पे लोगों की मैंने छतों की हाइट 7 फुट 8 फुट से ज्यादा नहीं देखी, हमने 10-12 फुट हमने वॉशरूम बनाए अपनी। लेकिन अफसोस की बात है, ये वो इंडस्ट्री है जो, अगर हम इसका तखमीना बताएं तो एग्रीकल्चर के बाद, मलिक साहब, एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर के बाद आपको घर के करीब तरीन जो रोजगार मुहैया करती है वो सिर्फ ब्रिक किलन सेक्टर है, जहां पर डायरेक्टली, दूसरी इंडस्ट्रीज की मैं बात नहीं करता, वहां तकरीबन 40 से 50 लाख वर्कर पूरे पाकिस्तान में भट्टे पे काम कर रहे हैं। हर भट्टे पे सर 200 से लेकर 250 वर्कर काम करता है मुख्तलिफ शक्लों में। इतनी बड़ी तादाद में अकोमोडेट किया हुआ इस इंडस्ट्री ने, और तमाम के तमाम भट्टा मालकान अपने पैसे से खुद काम करते हैं, किसी तरह की फाइनेंशियल असिस्टेंस किसी भी बैंक या अदारे से नहीं है। अगर बारिश आए भट्टा बैठ जाता है, उसी का बैठ जाता है। अगर खुदा न खास्ता, मैं नहीं कहता कि तमाम वर्कर लीडर लोगों को डिटेक्ट करते हैं, उनके सही राइट पे भी बात करते हैं, लेकिन हमारे मुल्क में एक मसला बन गया है कि आए और हाई कोर्ट चले जाए, बर्फ लेके आए, लोगों के लाखों रुपए लेके चले जाए, भट्टा बैठ जाता है। तो सर काइंडली इस फोरम पे मैं ये बात भी पहुंचाना चाहता हूं, शायद इसका क्या नतीजा निकले, कुछ शायद हमारी हेल्प हो जाए। इस मुल्क को हमने आगे लेके जाना है। जो लोग अपनी सरमाए से लोगों को रोजगार कर रहे हैं, हमें उनकी भी इज्जत करनी है। हमने सिर्फ उनके ऊपर मर्ड थ्रो नहीं करना। हमारे वो जो लोग वर्कर हमारे साथ काम करते हैं वो हमारे बच्चों की तरह, हमारे खानदान की तरह हैं। हमने सर अपने भट्टों के ऊपर, खालिद साहब जानते हैं, हमने अपने डिस्ट्रिक्ट स्कूल लाहौर में ब्रिकला ऑनर एसोसिएशन ने, ILO भी इस चीज की गवाह है कि हमने स्कूल बनाए। गवर्नमेंट तो भाग गई पंजाब में, वो नारा लगा के चलेगी कि हम स्टेपन देगी। कहाँ है वो लोग? वो प्रोग्राम एक लेके आते हैं, लेकिन कि सर हमारा बिजनेस है, हमने इसको ठीक करना है। और दूसरा सर ये जो सोशल सिक्योरिटी का मसला है, मैं सोशल जो कंप्लाइंस है उसके हवाले से बात करूंगा। AOBI सोशल सिक्योरिटी मिनिमम वेज, नो डाउट कि हमारी इंडस्ट्री के बड़े मसाइल हैं, लेकिन सर इसके लिए भी हमें ILO ने हमेशा लोगों तक, हमने जाके थ्रू पाकिस्तान हमने कंपेन की, लोगों को वर्कर्स राइट्स के हवाले से ब्रिक किलन ऑनर्स को सेंसिटाइज किया, उनको समझाया। लेकिन कुछ जमीनी हकायक हैं, मैं आपको बता दूं, जब तक उन जमीनी हकायक के मुताबिक कवानीन को दुरुस्त सिमत में नहीं ले जाएगा, कवानीन जितने मर्जी बना ले इंप्लीमेंट नहीं होंगे। लॉ एनफोर्समेंट उसी वक्त होगी जब जमीनी हकायक के मुताबिक कवानीन को दुरुस्त किया जाएगा। क्या हमने नहीं कहा कि आए हमारा वर्कर क्या आपस में एग्रीमेंट करवाएं कि वो हमारे पास काम किन हालात में करना चाहता है, उसके क्या राइट्स होंगे, हमारे क्या राइट्स होंगे? क्या ये हमारी बात को कभी माना गया? सर जब तक के जमीनी हकायक के मुताबिक, आप देखें भट्टा किस तरह काम करता है। बहुत सारे लोग जानते हैं भट्टा बारिशों में बंद होता है, बारिशें आती हैं भट्टा बंद हो जाता है, डिस्प्लेस लोग हैं, एक जगह दूसरी जगह चले जाते हैं अपनी मर्जी से। इनके टाइम पीस रेटेड वर्कर हैं, वो टाइमली रेटेड वर्कर ही नहीं है। वो सुबह अपनी मर्जी से उठते हैं, जब मर्जी धूप होती काम बंद करते हैं, सर्दी में काम नहीं करते, गर्मी में साये में काम करते हैं। इन तमाम चीजों को समझने की जरूरत है कि अगर हम इन तमाम का कंट्रीब्यूशन सोशल सिक्योरिटी का पे करेंगे, एक भट्टे पे 200 वर्कर है, आज अगर 1500 कंट्रीब्यूशन है तो 3 लाख रुपए एक भट्टा मालिक कैसे सबका दे देगा? ऐसा नहीं होता सर। उसी सूरत में हो सकता है कि हम जमीनी हकायक के मुताबिक एनालाइज करें, चीजों को समझें, इसके ऊपर बनाएं को कमेटी अच्छी सी, जिनको ये स्टेक, ये अथॉरिटी दी जाए कि वो ब्रिक किलन के हवाले से ये जो चीजें हैं जिन पे एलिगेशन है, इन पे कमेटी बने, और एसोसिएशन इंशाल्लाह अपना जो है पॉजिटिव जो है रोल वो प्ले करेगी। तो इंशाल्लाह हम आपसे ये तवक्को करते हैं कि मैं यहाँ कहना चाहूंगा, आपकी बात सर सिंह की बात, बिलाशुबा बहुत सारी ईंटों की जरूरत है। जैसे डॉक्टर साहब ने फरमाया 30 बिलियन आई थिंक सो ईंटों की जरूरत है हमारे पाकिस्तान में। अगर एट ए टाइम 20,000 बट्टे हैं, 12,000 ऑपरेशनल हो या 15,000 हो, तो सर हम फिर भी 30 करोड़ ईंट रोज प्रोड्यूस करते हैं पाकिस्तान में। और ये मैं दावे से कहता हूं, हमने बहुत से मुल्कों को देखा है, पाकिस्तान की ईंट इतनी सब स्टैंडर्ड नहीं है। हमारी ईंट बहुत के मुल्कों में जा रही है सर, हमारी ईंट यूके जा रही है, मिडल ईस्ट जा रही है, शिपमेंट होती है, होगा आपके इलम में। हमारी ईंट अच्छी है, क्वालिटी अच्छी है, हमारी मड अच्छी है सर, लेकिन इसकी जरूरत है इसको रेगुलेट करने की कुछ चीजों को। तो सर हम ईंट दे सकते हैं। मेरे साथ भी आपके वो जो कोरियन साथियों ने रब्ता किया था, जस्ट 1 मिनट नॉट मोर। तो इंशाल्लाह अगर मौका मिले, हम अपनी इंडस्ट्री में लोगों को कोई बाउंड्री की लिमिट नहीं है कि यहाँ से मुल्तान से या बहावलपुर से ईंट नहीं जा सकती। बहावलपुर में 400 से ज्यादा बटा है, मुल्तान में 600 है, रंगियार खां में 400 बटा है। तो हम ईंटें पर डे की जो है इतनी प्रोडक्शन है वो सिंध की, अगर सिंध का कोयला हम पंजाब में इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं, बलूचिस्तान का कर सकते हैं, तो यहाँ से सर ब्रिक्स में जा सकती है, क्योंकि अगर वहां से 3 लाख ट्रक के किराया लेते हैं ना कोयला लाने का, तो यहाँ 50,000 60,000 किराए में ट्रक वहां ईंट ले जाएगा, और तो सर इंशाल्लाह इतनी महंगी नहीं होगी। तो रेस्ट एश्योर, बाकी सर मेरे ख्याल में इट्स शॉर्ट ऑफ टाइम में काफी चीजें क्लियर करना चाहता था, लेकिन मुझे चेयर ने इशारा कर दिया है, तो मैं उनका ख्याल रखते हुए अपनी जो बातें उनको मुख्तर कर लेता हूं। लेकिन मैं फिर आपसे हाउस से रिक्वेस्ट करता हूं, हमारा दर खुला है, और पाकिस्तान में मैं अपने साथियों को बताना चाहता हूं, ब्रिक इंडस्ट्री अब वो एक जगह पे नहीं खड़ी हुई। हमने सोच लिया है कि हमारे ऊपर जो अल्जामात है ना आलूदगी के, बॉन्डेड लेबर का, हमने इससे निकलना है। आए सारे लोग हमारी मदद करें यार, हम आपको वेलकम करते हैं, हम हर उस बढ़ते हुए अच्छे हाथ को चुनेंगे भी जो हमें इस दलदल से निकालने में हमारी मदद करेगा। थैंक यू वेरी मच। मैं ऑर्गेनाइजर का, ILO का, तमाम साथियों का शुक्रिया अदा करता हूं, आपने मुझे हौसले से सुना, बहुत शुक्रिया, थैंक यू।
Thank you for that passionate conclusion. Yes, of course.
He just want to respond.
थैंक यू अब्दुल्ला साहब, आपने जो बातें की है ना, हमने जो काम किया है उसमें सारी बातें इंक्लूडेड है कि आपके मसाइल क्या हैं, उनको कैसे लेके जाना है। हमने एक फ्रेमवर्क बनाया, तो मैं चाहूंगा कि वो फ्रेमवर्क हम आपसे शेयर करें। उसमें हमने पूरी कैलकुलेशन करके बताई कि सोशल सिक्योरिटी कैसे पे हो सकती है और आपको इंडस्ट्री का दर्जा कैसे मिल सकता है, आपके मसाइल कैसे हल होंगे। सो वी हैव प्रिपेयर्ड a full framework. SDPI has done a work on this. All calculations are done. All homework is done. Interviews were conducted by Shoaib Saab and many other colleagues. So these are incorporated. We do realize your issues as well, because we do not want to create any rift between labor or the owners or the buyers. We want to create an atmosphere where buyer can, sir, you mentioned that you are subsidizing 2 rupees. So similar kind of mechanism we have put in place in the framework. इंशाल्लाह वो आपसे शेयर भी करेंगे, आपसे मजीद बात होगी। But thank you very much putting across all your concerns and everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for engaging in what we in ILO call social dialogue, and it's good to see it in action. Colleagues, we have 15 minutes or so left, and I'd like to open the floor for any questions you may have to the panelists, any observations or comments you would like to make, or any feedback you would like to share. So please, the floor is open. Just raise your hand, and I have one here. Let me just get a sense of how many would like to take the floor so I can manage the time. 2, 3. Right, I'll close it at that. So, sir, let me start with you. If you could introduce yourself and then ask your question or make your comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Arsalan Khan. I'm from Islamic Republic, Pakistan. I'm from humanitarian sector. My question is that what discussed here is very well, is very informed, and it was good to her because we have a lot of information from that and discussions. Here we have discussed only big industry or chemical industry, but the rest, like steel industry, like PVC or pipe industry, like plastic industries, what about that? And second question is, we have talked about the labor rights, which is very good and should be in place. But what about those who without labor, the general population is impacting from the impact of the negative impact of the industries? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe pass the microphone to next door, and we'll take all the questions before.
Thank you so very much. My name is Sadia Atta, and I am youth and gender expert working in Pakistan and outside Pakistan. I have 2 questions very briefly, one for Dr. Saifullah and second question for Malik Sahab. When we talk about 3 zones, I think it gives a very clear direction to set a strategy, including the rights of workers. So my point is related to women and girls who are working there. You covered this point slightly in the third zone, where they need more support in terms of molding and when they work a lot. So I believe the new strategy that now the country is working on will be including the health issues, the reproductive health issues as well, the whole agenda of health and hygiene, and also health in general, and how we can prevent women and girls particularly from this field and giving them more skills. So if you have time, please just shed some light on that. To Malik Sahab, what I have understood, thank you very much for excellent presentation, and Saif, your presentation was very excellent, very good and excellent. What I have understood from your presentation, that these housing project has separate wash facilities, which means that the toilet facilities are not included in the housing, in the houses. So my point is that don't you think that it will create more risk of gender-based violence, particularly among women and girls? And I also strongly believe that young boys are also a vulnerable population. So how would you address that? I do understand that you have mentioned that a gender and C action plan is the part of overall plan, which seems interesting. But in terms of implementation of this project, when it moves further, it might create more risk for women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then, sir, you have the floor for the final round of questions.
Thank you very much. My name is Hafiz Junaid Amir Sial. I'm Director Workers Welfare Fund, Ministry of Overseas Pakistanis. Just brief general remarks. Very insightful and productive session. Brick industry, the construction sector is a very robust industry and is a mobilizing factor in the overall national development. Since employers, workers, and the government, they are all important stakeholders, the need is to make the industry more socially and environmentally compliant through viable legislations and implementation of laws and strict accountability. Overall, it should be a win-win situation for all stakeholders, taking benefit from the international best practices in line with International Labour Organization conventions. Thank you very much.
Very valid point. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn to the panel for a quick round of reactions and responses. There were a few specific questions. There was one for Mr. Malik in particular, but I'm going to follow the same flow as we did for the initial remarks. I'm going to ask my colleague to the left to start, and then we'll move along. So if I could ask you 2 minutes each, that would be helpful. Saifullah.
Thank you so very much. Sadia, a very pertinent question that you asked. Typically, these are the invisible workers within the brick industry when you talk about that. They are not recognized. They are, I'm not sure if they are valued or not, maybe in the family they're valued, but generally when you have a discussion in the brick industry and the workers, it's the men come to the mind. So when men come to the mind, and even the contract is signed, so that is in the pathir, if you see in that organogram just showed. So it's the head of the family, which is typically a man, that is the one who signs a verbal contract with the munshi, with the jamadar. So it's between two men. So issues are the issues which you raised, health issues, reproductive health issues, wash concerns at the workplaces are not even discussed or debated. So that is not in the discussion, unfortunately. But that is a huge gap which needs to be identified. Even when it comes to wages, so if you talk to brick employers, typically many of them, I'm not saying Khalik Sahab, but many of them say that no, we don't hire women. Otherwise, hum pe aur ilzam lag jayega. We'll have other allegations as well. So they treat, generally, the brick owners treat them, if you hire women workers, you may sort of harassment and those issues come into mind. So they're invisible. In contract, whether it's a verbal or not, in wages, so when the wages come, they can be male head of the family. I mean, there's nothing wrong about it, but woman has worked. She should get that money. She should know what time she spent and what is the wage she's getting, and then whether she contribute to the house or not, that's beyond the point. So those are not common. Then come the issues of women, for example, pregnancy. For example, health and hygiene, menstrual health and product and services, toilet at the brick kilns facilities. All these issues are not part of those verbal contracts. So when families goes and do a contract with a jamadar, they do not talk about these issues. That how does dwelling need to be, and that's the point where other sort of stakeholder can come in. And as Abdul Haq Saab. He's one of those forward-looking employers who are openly saying that we need help us to come out of this. How to do it? ILO is doing great job. Solidarity Center, others are doing it, and it's a great opportunity that we have Malik Saab here from SPHF, because that we could, we can piggyback on that amazing work. They cannot do all those things because they have to get the houses reconstructed, but we can join the ship to bring other services to help improve the industry as they want to improve the industry. So that's a very sort of a focus point which I want to, and thank you for raising this particular point.
Thank you, Saifullah. Mr. Khalid Mahmood?
Yes, I'll particularly talk about the other industries which are linked with the construction industry. There are millions of workers who are working as laborers in the industry, making big plazas and dams and a lot of other roads. All these are part of the construction industry. Unfortunately, the overall organizing of the workers in Pakistan is not more than 3%. I mean, not more than 3% workers are organized in trade unions. So when there is no voice for the workers, then of course it's difficult to protect the labor rights. And as I earlier said, when we lack the implementation of the labor laws, then it's very difficult. We know that in some of the dam construction projects, there is a union, and because these projects are being funded by the World Bank or Asian Development Bank, and they have some clauses in their agreements that there will be freedom of association and there will be compliance to the international standards as well. So in those kind of projects, there is an opportunity to organize more workers and to do collective bargaining. So this is in some projects this is happening. But we saw a lot of big projects, for example, under the CPAC in Punjab especially, and we saw a lot of accidents happening. Media was stopped from reporting the accident which happened in these big projects. And we visited some of the construction sites. When we talked with the workers, they were not getting the minimum wage. There was a fire incident in Lahore, and some of the workers were killed in that fire in that camp. Those kind of incidents also happened. So I think it's very unfortunate that our workers are working in such conditions, and there is a need to talk about this openly, not about only the bricklaying industry, but all the other industries, and especially in the construction industry, which, as we learned from the first presentation, that the occupational safety and health issues are huge. But I would say workers do need voice. Workers do need living wages also in that industry. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Mr. Malik, any final?
Ji, thank you, Sandhya. Thank you for pointing it out, Ji. And let me give you the background of the situation right now, Ji. 80% of my population right now, the beneficiary population, they do not have any facility, Ji. It's an open defecation right now. Out of 100% my population, which used to have some kind of facility, out of that post 2022 flat, 16% now do not have it. So I'm standing at 94% of my population who's using open defecation. अगर आप सिंध के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में इस वक्त जाकर देखेंगी, तो इस वक्त जो कम्युनिटी के अंदर जो एरियाज डिफाइन किए हुए हैं, झाड़ियां लगा देते हैं एक साइड पे खवातीन के लिए और दूसरी साइड पे मर्दों के लिए जी. The whole community female goes on one side in open defecation and the male goes to the other side for open defecation. We are very clear about, मैंने पहले आपको बताया कि we are not going with the orthodox गली नाली वाला काम हमने नहीं करना है, ठीक है? We haven't closed our options from single use facility to the family facility to the communal facility, and it is incorporated in the settlement improvement plan also. Currently, we are working on 20 different options and designs which can be implemented in one settlement, depending upon the need of the people, depending upon the priority of the community. And this is not going to be just, the provision. The current designs in which the stances are actually, we are proposing up to 2 or 4 stances जहाँ पे हम propose कर रहे हैं. They are separate for male and separate for female, with separate entry for female and separate entry for male. Ji. So the preferred model currently is a family-based facility. हाउस बेस्ड फैसिलिटी में सिर्फ हमें ये प्रॉब्लम्स आ रहे हैं, एक तो अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ स्पेस का इशू आता है, फिर ये है कि हमारे पास वहां पे सैनिटेशन फैसिलिटीज नहीं है जी, जो ड्रेनेज वाटर है वो कहाँ जाएगा, तो आप गली में नहीं फेंक सकते, आप मोहल्ले में नहीं फेंक सकते, आप घर में नहीं फेंक सकते, यू नीड टू डिस्पोज दैट ऑल, सो दैट रिक्वायर्ड बेसिक मिनिमम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स आल्सो. Our current portfolio that we are looking at, the current availability of financing with me is around 70,000 units, G. But my current requirement is for an $80 million US, G. And currently we are working on it. We are starting from 70,000 from December onwards, and already initial discussion has been carried out. But these factors has been accounted for, and these will be only carried out as per the preference of the local community. We are not actually pushing it on them. G. It is going to be carried out by the VRC, COs, village organization, and the families. Implementation will be carried out by them. Amount will go into their accounts. G. There is no contractor involved in this also, unless until the work is beyond their capacity. So I hope my question suffices. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. Mr. Abdul Haq, any final words, responses to questions from the Brickhill Owners Association?
Thank you.
बहुत शुक्रिया जी. कुछ बातें तो सारे सवालों के जवाब आपके मिलके जो हमारा सेक्टर है, हम तो सिर्फ उसकी बात करेंगे. हमारे जो जैसे कि नजफ साहब ने बताया कि इतने बिलियंस का प्रोजेक्ट है, लेकिन आगे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की वजह से वो ये चीजें उसको नहीं कर सकते. तो हमारा तो फार फ्लंग एरिया में इंडस्ट्री होती है हमारी, और वहां पे तो कोई ऐसा ड्रेनेज का सिस्टम नहीं होता, लेकिन इसके बावजूद ये हम पे लोगों का एतराज है कि ये फैसिलिटीज नहीं देते, लेकिन हम अपने तौर पे कर रहे हैं. वहां पे अगर आपने एक एरिया में एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर के पास आपने एक भट्टा लगा दिया, और ये शर्त है एनवायरमेंट की कि भट्टा 2-3 मील दूर आबादी से हो, वो लगा दिया, तो वहां अगर हम लैट्रिन बनाते हैं तो साथ वाले जो जिम्मेदार झगड़ा करने आ जाते हैं, पानी कहाँ ले जाएंगे आप. ये तो इशू जो जमीनी हकायक है वो है. और दूसरा एक बात जो वेजेस के हवाले से बात है कि औरत के वेजेस के, हमारा इसमें ये है कि हमने एक स्टेप ले लिया सर, हमने ये स्टेप ले लिया कि हमने इसको मैकेनाइज करना शुरू कर दिया कि बूढ़े भी काम कर सकें और कमजोर अफराद भी काम कर सकें. उसका स्टेप हम पंजाब में बहुत अच्छी तरह ले चुके हैं. ये जो मड मिक्सिंग मशीनें सर हमने लगा दी, वो जो मोल्डिंग करते हैं ना औरतें और बूढ़े लोग भी, कमजोर अफराद भी ईंटें बनाते हैं सांचे से, तो वो हमने उनको गारा देना शुरू कर दिया है. वो उनके जो काम का जो सबसे मुश्किल तीन काम होता है, गारा बनाना, मट्टी को तैयार करना, वो तैयारी हमने भट्टा मालका ने अपनी जिम्मे ले ली है. तो हम इसमें आगे जा रहे हैं, लेकिन उसमें फिर भी वही बात आ जाती है यहाँ पे जो बातें हुई कि हमें इन तमाम चीजों को जमीनी हकायक से जोड़ने की जरूरत है, ताकि अगर कवानीन मौजूद हैं और उनकी इंप्लीमेंट नहीं हो रहा तो उसकी क्या वजह है. इसका मतलब है कि कवानीन में कोई लकूना है, कोई कमी है, उस डेफिशिएंसीज को खत्म करने के लिए हमें बैठने की और फिर उसको दुरुस्त करने की जरूरत है. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
Thank you so much, colleagues. I'm afraid we are out of time, so I was even going to cut the summary short. But I wanted to thank the panelists for contributing to the discussion, and we started the session by highlighting the challenges and the what was it that Saifullah called it, the 3 fault zones, and we sort of elaborated on that. But then we also heard very positive stories coming out of Sindh, and we also heard the positive environmental impacts of the zigzag technology, for example. So we see some of the solutions, and I think we sort of have very well met the brief for the conference, which is hope and light at the end of the tunnel. So I think that was a very appropriate way to end the discussion. Moderation, I'm going to hand back to you, and thank you for allowing me to chair. So over to you for the closing.
My role is to thank you, Gair, for steering us to the session and chairing the session. Thank you, Gair, for your role. Thank you, everyone, for participation. I think one group photo for here. Thank you. Panelists, please join here.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, we've had some discussions.